joining in. How is my voice? Is it pretty clear?
It is.
Sure is.
I've added a little microphone off to the left after people complaining they couldn't hear me.
What did you say? I'm kidding.
So, thanks a lot. Thank you. Very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we certainly have all of the speakers are present. Where's everybody else?
That's a good start.
It's a very good start.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't we just, we'll get going. So this afternoon, welcome everybody, and hoping some more will join us. Today, Larry is going to be my co-host. So he's going to take care of all the mechanics of letting you in or muting you. It looks to me as though just about everybody is muted now. So let's get going. This is the meeting of the Bergen County Marine Conservation League Parks and Open Space Committee, and welcome everybody to well, when I look out in Mill Valley, I think I can see the houses across the ravine. I think they're still there. Anyway, it's not a great day, but it's a great day for us. So why don't we get started? First, approval of the minutes of July 9th. I missed you all. Deliberately missed out on August. I felt it was time for a vacation for everybody. So the minutes are for July 9th. Does anybody have any objections to the minutes? We won't ask for a roll call. Anybody have any concerns about the minutes, corrections? If not, we'll assume that they are approved as submitted. Okay, announcements. I didn't put any in, but I did want to let you know, we'll maybe talk later when we come to state parks, that there's going to be a state parks webinar, including the Secretary for Resources, Wade Crowfoot, on September 15th, 11 to 11:30. If you want to put down in the, somebody else can type this into the chat room, the Zoom ID for that meeting is 819-3723-5293. Larry, maybe you can type that into the chat room if you would. The other is to let you know, if you haven't already seen it, a video, actually it's on YouTube now, on the Incident Command Center at TPL's San Geronimo property. It's done by Paul. It's really it's a short video, but it's a very graphic way to see. For those of us who don't live in San Geronimo Valley or go by there, the link is SGV, capital SGV, Incident Command Center 2020. It's very simple. Just go to that. You'll get YouTube, and it's worth watching. I have a couple of, does anybody else have any other announcements of Zoom meetings or webinars coming up that would be of interest to everybody? Hearing none. Okay, we'll continue. 2 updates just on the general e-bikes. Is not on the agenda, but first of all, MMWD has reached out to various organizations and is trying to set up a series of meetings to discuss the issue of e-bikes that continue to occur on MMWD watershed lands, on the roads. The second is just in the ongoing saga of a lawsuit filed against National Park Service last August by public employees for environmental responsibility, in which MCL is a co-plaintiff. That has been pending rather, while the formal rule-making process proceeds done by NPS. We don't have a final, we don't know whether the rule has actually been finalized or not. If it is, it could render the PEER suit moot, or in any case, they would have to certainly revisit the complaint, the petition. So that's all pending. So let's go on to kind of rearrange the agenda somewhat to accommodate some people. The first, let's start out with 1TAM. And the Janet Klein, you are back. You are with us. And do you want to share your screen? Janet's going to tell us more about the One Science, I should say, the Science Summit, which is coming up, this symposium coming up in October. Janet, do you want to take it?
Hi there, give me a second. I didn't realize I was first up on the agenda. So
well, it was early because Claire Mooney was
Okay.
going to be coming and she needed to be early, so.
All right, give me 1 second to get the agenda up on the screen.
Yeah, right, okay.
Okay. 1TAM Virtual Summit. There we go. Wonders of the Internet. Share screen. Okay, enter. So we are happy to announce registration is open for the 1TAM Summit. And I think, as I mentioned before, it will be every single Thursday morning in in October. So I will paste into the chat in a minute the link for where you can register. And you can sign up for every single day in one shot. You're basically filling your cart. And we are asking for $5 per day or the whole kit and caboodle for $25. And if that's a barrier to folks, please reach out to me and I can work with you on that. In addition to, each day will be up and running from 9 a.m. till 12:30ish, depending on the exact day, because no one can stand that much Zoom. So we're not going to drag it out too long. Some of the speakers will be doing almost highlights of the real content that they have, and then we'll offer up a longer recorded piece that you can click on the link and view at your leisure later, because we have so much material to cover. It is a huge topic, and then the events of the last few weeks really hit that home that we have a lot to talk about. This time out, we are putting a really big emphasis not so much on the science, but on us as people and how we interact with each other and how we interact with our parks. So we're going to open each session with a piece on this is what the climate science says about what is upon us now and where we believe we're going. But then the rest of each session will be a little less sciencey focused and a lot more management action, human, and how do we interact with each other and how do we prioritize the allocation of resources as these crises accelerate around us, and who are we in community and in relationship with. So I think it's going to look a little different than what you might have come to expect from us, but I'm personally really excited by the lineup. On this website, I'm going to click on the preliminary program here, and the caveat is it is preliminary. So all of the speakers listed on this are confirmed, but the exact title of what they're presenting may change. And again, especially with that idea that some speakers are going to do almost like a highlight of a much longer body of work that they want to share. So you can see it by each day. So October 1st will be setting the stage, like an overview of the climate science relative to Marin County. And then our social climate, where are we at socially within Marin County? And then we'll have a day focused on forests and fire. We put in a space holder to talk about the Woodward fire. And I don't have the details right now because Allison's been out dealing with the Woodward fire, but there's a space holder there. I expect the timing on the forest day to change actually to sort of accommodate the reality of these few weeks. Day 3, which is October 15th, will be focused on sea level rise. I've got a couple of program gaps in there, but I think we're closing in on those speakers. And then October 22nd, we'll be focusing in on biodiversity and resiliency. It's a lot of the content that I think you guys are quite familiar with and are used to seeing. And then the last day, October 28th, we're going to kind of turn the mic over to the folks with Drawdown Marin, and that programming right now is blank because Alex, who chairs the Drawdown Marin project, has been out on maternity leave and she's just coming back. So we're going to finalize the pieces of that on Monday. So you'll see that part of the calendar start to fill in I think by the middle of next week. But these are the major topic areas that I think I expect to cover. But there is a little bit of still a little bit of movement there. And then one last thing in with how we're approaching this program, in addition to some speakers wanting to provide more content than the time slot that we're giving them allows for, and us offering up links to that, we'll also be offering up the opportunity to register for some associated workshops where it'll be two-way. You'll be in a smaller group and you'll be able to enter into conversation, as opposed to being in kind of a one-way didactic, gigantic webinar. And we'll be offering up kind of some curated, these are great videos, these are great recorded sessions, these are some other resources you might be really interested in checking out. And we will be kind of pushing those throughout the entire month of October using Instagram and Twitter. If you guys are interested in a little mini how to use Instagram or Twitter, I think I can arrange to set that up for MCL, because I know I myself am not the most conversant in Instagram. So that's it, if anybody's got any questions.
Questions, either raise your hand or use the little blue hand at the bottom of the, is that at the bottom of the chat?
Oh, I want to mention one other thing. I see Max pasted in the Together Bay Area Fall Forum is coming up, and it overlaps. The first day of our symposium is the first day of the Together Bay Area Symposium, and Annie and I are going to connect either tomorrow or Friday or early next week and figure out a way to both cross-promote and create an opportunity to at least log in and view the content from both, because it was an unintentional and an unavoidable scheduling conflict that we created there.
Okay, any questions? Little blue hands. Larry, are you looking out for questions? Okay,
Yeah,
it looks like a
yes, I am. There are none.
There are none. Yeah, okay.
No.
Janet, looks like a rich October for those of us. Every Thursday morning, it's just sort of like going to school. Okay, I'm up, had my breakfast, I'm still in my jams, but I'm going to tune in to the Science Symposium. Thanks very much. Okay, and well, I don't see Mia. Mia, I know you're here. Mia, speak up. I saw you on the participant list.
I am. I'm here.
Right. Okay. You're aware that you're early on the agenda. Mia? Okay. Mia, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, right. So give us an update on Muir Woods projects, and also the reopening of Muir Woods, and you're going to also introduce Will Mateo, the new trails trails stewardship. Is that correct? Okay, we'll start. Mia.
Great, thank you. I had to pause there a second because I was listening in to a wonderful panel that One Tam Lisette has put together for California Diversity Day today. And she had a number of state people making a wonderful presentation. So happy California Diversity Day. And that's just one thing to give a PS to Janet's One Tam report. But down to Muir Woods, the Redwood Renewal 2020 season is wrapping up. From January till just a week ago, the focus was on the water and wastewater project, which has now been completed with the water lines located out of the sensitive zone, which is near Redwood Creek, and upgraded and modernized. And the lift station, the old lift station, is now out for a footprint increase in the natural resource area. And this is kind of a boring but important project because it moves this infrastructure out of the park sensitive zone it eliminates the possibility of a sewer failure, and it expands the firefighting capacity, and the road is nicely paved. So this part of the project is done for this season.
So what has
The-
happened to the restrooms that were in the plaza? Are they still there?
Yes, they are. The restrooms are part of another Redwood renewal project called the Sustainable Access Plan, SAP for short. And the SAP project goes from what you think of as the plaza, the current visitor center, the plaza, the restroom, the trails down to the annex lot, and the trails down to where the old nursery used to be, which is now going to be a new parking lot and restroom. But that project is still two years away. But what the Redwood Renewal team is doing right now is all the behind the scenes design work. We're just receiving the 30% designs for the plaza, the new parking lots, and the trails, and the Dipsy Bridge. So the design work is going on right now to determine where that new restroom would be so that the old restroom could come out, how to welcome people. And as you probably remember, the SAP not only is the welcome area, relocating the infrastructure like the old restroom to a better out of the sensitive zone area, but it also transforms the main parking lot from a parking lot into a shuttle and disabled parking area. So it moves the parking down the road. So we're in the thinking and design phase on that right now.
And that follows then the EA comes after that, is that correct?
Well, the EA's been completed already.
That's been completed. I thought
Yeah.
we reviewed that already.
Yeah. Yeah, so the
Okay,
Redwood Renewal, so to back up, the Redwood Renewal projects under the MOU between the Park Service and the county, the first thing, they all have these amazing silver linings. The first thing we did was we eliminated all the parking along the road shoulder and put the reservation system in. And the wisdom of that is showing in this fire and COVID period, because with no parking on the road shoulder, there's 2 lanes of traffic, and if an evacuation was needed, there is not the congestion or pedestrians in the road shoulder, an unexpected benefit.
Yeah.
And the reservation system, this is really the time to visit Muir Woods, because thanks to the reservation system, the visitation is very low so that there can be safety in visiting. There's a one-way flow of visitors, and it's you just have the woods all to yourself. It's going to be a beautiful fall. So the silver lining has been really demonstrated through being able to manage the visitor flow thanks to the reservation system.
Yeah.
So the other thing that's happening now with Redwood Renewal is the trail work in the park. So if you visit, you'll get to see the trail crew in action. I think you might have a state park person later, Nona, do you?
Yeah, Bree is going to be reporting in, and Arlen also on China Camp and other state parks.
Okay,
Yeah,
because
Bree-
we're very
Bree's
excited.
reporting in later on.
Yeah, great, because we're very excited about the trail work happening in the main part of the state park there, but we'll let Bree talk about that. And I'll just skip down to Muir Beach, where even more turtles returned to Big Lagoon last Friday. It was wonderful to welcome them.
Yeah.
So
One other question about, I assume that the two bridge replacements have been deferred to 2021 at this point.
right, they've been deferred for a couple of reasons. Unfortunately, there's no money in the Redwood Renewal Kitty because of all the park closures due to COVID. So the bridges have been deferred, and we're kind of scrambling on how to put together next year's package at this time.
Yeah, great, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So can you
the-
introduce Wilforth? Yeah.
just one more thing. Part of the MOU process is reporting back to the public. And October 6th, we're going to be giving a short summary at the Board of Supervisors meeting. Of course, we test out our presentation on you first, and you always get the up to the minute. But just to let you know, October 6th at the Board of Supervisor meeting.
Okay, that will be, let's see, that's going to be before we have another meeting in October. So we'll simply send out a, we can send out an announcement through our e-blast to remind people, and you certainly will be sending more reminders, I'm sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, right. Okay. All right. Thanks. That's the MOU for those of you with long memories.
No, Janet has her hand raised.
Yeah, Janet.
I just wanted to follow up on Mia's pitch for visiting Muir Woods. I was out there a month ago, and it really is amazing to be there with no one there. I've avoided it now for many, many years. So it was spectacular to go back. And on a related note, Alcatraz is up and running. And this is an astonishing time to go out to Alcatraz. So where normally each boat will have 500 to 700 people on it, it's down to 150 people tops per boat ride. And right now visitation is down around 200 people period per day. So it's kind of like having the site to yourself, and you can't go into the cell blocks, but there is a revised audio tour for that's for the outside, and the gardens are really amazing. It's
Great.
you know, one of those odd bonuses to what has, you know, transpired.
Thank you. Yeah, there are some bonuses out there. Okay. So back to you, Mia, to introduce Will Mateo.
Well, Will Mateo has joined the One-TAM team as our trail stewardship manager, working with Jamie Baxter. And this has been a standing goal to have someone who's dedicated to understanding the trail system and forming a stewardship program and working with the different agencies. And I just have met Will via Zoom. And so maybe it's best if he give some background on himself and his goals. And it was just a wonderful opportunity with this meeting to begin to introduce him to all the stakeholders and different viewpoints. So thank you, Will, for joining us today.
Oh,
Thank
there
you,
you are.
Mia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Great. Thanks so much, Mia. Again, my name is Will Mateo. This here is Cesar, my 2-month-old son. So thanks everyone for having us. So I just wanted to take a few minutes. I won't take much time, just introduce myself as well as the One-TAM Trail Stewardship Program. So I was hired in late January to pilot this One-TAM Trail Stewardship Program. I'm not local. I actually spent my formative years in New Mexico and Colorado, so I'm very excited to be here and getting to know you all. So a little bit of background. The various land management agencies that make up the One-TAM Collaborative identified a need to work together more closely in order to unlock more capacity for trail maintenance and construction on the mountain. So this has the potential to take a couple of different forms. One big area of potential, I think, is to build a volunteer corps for all of One-TAM, rather than just sort of individual siloed volunteer programs for each of the land management agencies as far as trail construction and maintenance are concerned. Excuse my bouncing, it really helps say sorry. Another potential form is to sort of centrally identify and maintain a database of trail maintenance priorities and particularly volunteer-friendly projects. Now, 2020 has certainly thrown all of us for a loop, since so far we've more or less been unable to host volunteer programs, and due to a hiring freeze at the Conservancy, we haven't really been able to build out the trail stewardship program as quickly as we originally anticipated. However, the behind the scenes work is certainly happening as far as increasing collaboration between the partners in the collaborative, developing trainings for dedicated trail volunteers. So really the reason I'm here today is just to start spreading the word about the nascent trail stewardship program. And I'd also love to hear from anybody here who has thoughts and ideas about how this program might continue to grow and evolve as we move into the end of this year and into 2021. So that's pretty much me. I'm going to go ahead and put my email address in the group chat. I don't know how much time we have for questions and comments right now, but I would love to hear people's ideas and thoughts if you'd like to follow up with me afterwards. So thanks once again.
Okay. Okay, great. I'm certain there are some questions for Will. Now's a good time to bring them up. We certainly welcome having a contact with you, and probably will look forward to some smaller group meetings with you also.
Absolutely.
We have MCL. We have a trails policy that goes back several years. We've been modifying it several times. We have some strong commitment to access to trails, and also to good behavior on trails, which of course you may be aware of our Slow and Say Hello collaboration with the Marin County Bicycle Coalition and Marin Horse Council. And we also look very, very closely at trails as they are being planned, particularly if they involve realignment and so forth. So been working very successfully with the Environmental Roundtable, which is convened by Marin County Parks. And I'm just wondering how you will kind of fit into that existing organization collaboration.
That is a great question. And I think that is kind of what we're figuring out now. I am working directly with Marin County Parks, but I haven't yet been looped in on the Environmental Roundtable. So I would love, Nona, perhaps you could get me an introduction there. I would love to come and participate in that.
And maybe I can help out too.
Maybe
And
Max, you might want to weigh in.
Sure. Welcome, Will. And I'm Max.
Thank you.
I'm the director from Marin County Parks, and really excited that you're joining the team. And yeah, I mean, I think typically the Environmental Roundtable is an opportunity for us to work in collaboration with, leaders from our environmental community around how we develop potential projects and, get feedback and ideas and share some of the science and things that we're learning early on in the planning process. And I think the Trail Stewardship Program is a little bit more focused on how to connect volunteers with maintenance or even with projects, but that's probably, it's probably less engaged in the actual planning process for the projects themselves. I think, as that program gets developed, we'll want to, find opportunities for Will and his team, and then also for our volunteers to know about potential projects and be able to provide input and be engaged in them. But I think that they're sort of at two different, the Environmental Roundtable is a little bit more before any potential project is fully developed.
Yeah, thanks for that context, Max. I agree. I'll definitely be more involved in the execution side of things as opposed to the early planning.
The useful utility of the Environmental Roundtable model is that it focuses, of course, just strictly on environmental issues, environmental challenges and so forth in new projects or realignments and so on. But it also is a way to bring together the environmental, in this case, 5, 6 environmental organizations, so that we all speak together and can provide input. This could be, I think, well used also for maintenance priorities and our concerns about, well, you're joining forces with MWD, for example. I mean, one TAM is involved in the Azalea Hill project.
Right.
So how that will involve you, I don't know yet.
Well, yeah, we'll continue to sort of explore and see exactly where I can fit into some of these various roundtables, I think.
Are there other questions?
Yes, we have one from Terry Thomas, and well, thank you for explaining that you have your 2-month-old there, because I thought you just had too much coffee or something.
Right, yeah, sorry.
Welcome, Will. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
My question is probably a bit more for Mia, or just to kind of let you know. A long time ago, Pacific Watershed Associates did a really excellent erosion map of pretty much all of Redwood Creek watershed. And I know it came up during the Redwood Renewal environmental assessment process, the status of the corrections that were to be made during that. And I have a feeling there's been a lot of corrections made. But Mia, could you address if that is still in people's framework or if that's way, way past?
Thank you, Terry, for bringing that up, both to make sure that as we give Will all kinds of background, Will, let's put that on our discussion list for our next meeting. But to answer Terry's question, Terry, that study was so important that we actually brought PWA on to give us a report card on how we were doing and to update the assessment.
Excellent.
And yeah, the bottom line is that you're right. We have made significant progress on a number of the identified failures. And then there's some key areas that we need to focus on, particularly in Camino del Canyon, for example. Not that we have overlooked them, they're just very, very challenging. So it's been a little while since I've looked at it. There's some very significant accomplishments by all the different agencies involved, MMWD, state parks, and national parks, as well as Green Gulch. And I'd be glad to either offline brief you or in 5 minutes give the whole group an example of the process and the accomplishments and why this is so important.
Thanks, Mia.
We have time if you want to do that. According to my agenda, we could take some time. You want to do that, Mia?
Well, my problem is my memory isn't very good on it. I would want to refresh myself on the
okay.
report. So maybe at
Maybe
the
another time.
October meeting, yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay, very good.
Thanks, Mia.
Any other questions? Okay, we've got some trail people here, but I don't hear them forthcoming. So I think you can look forward to, Will, you can look forward to our being in touch with you and maybe in a small group sharing some of our feelings about the trail. We've been experiencing them for many years. Larry Minicus was president of Town Plaza Conservation Club, which is the oldest conservation organization really in Marin County, 1912, formed at the same time as the Water District. So there's a huge amount of knowledge of these trails. Robert, I'm not certain whether you're here or not, Robert Eichstadt, who knows the landscape. Connie Berta, we just lost, who was a horsewoman equestrian who knew the landscape as well as virtually anybody knows it. Al Bauman, a cyclist who knows the landscape extremely well. So you have in this group, you've got some expertise and understanding of the condition of trails, which ones need work and so forth. And at some point we'll be delighted to share that information with you.
Thank you, Nona. I really look forward to those future conversations.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Welcome,
Okay.
Will.
Yes?
Oh, I just said welcome, Will.
Thank you, Mia.
Okay, we'll move on. Next on the agenda is MMWD, Sean, and we're going to hear about progress on the Azalea Hills from Aaron. So why don't you take it, either Sean or Aaron?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Sean Horn, Watershed Resource Manager. Aaron's going to give us an update on the Azalea Hill project, and then we also have Sherry Adams with us, and she's going to go over some of the project elements as well with Aaron, and then we'll jump into a couple updates for upcoming board member meetings that we've got and agenda items on that schedule, as well as a new program that we've rolled out recently, which we're calling our Watershed Creators Program. So with that, I'll hand it over to Aaron.
Okay. Hey, Aaron.
All right. Let me see, can you all hear me and see my screen?
I certainly can. It looks good.
Okay, awesome. Great, so thanks for having us here today. Sherry and I have provided this really brief presentation. We provided a copy of it to Nona in PDF form if everybody's interested. She can pass that along. Just to kind of give you an idea briefly of what we're going to talk about today is just really review some of the project phases that we have planned for Azalea Hill, go over where our current funding is and where we potentially see funding coming from in the future. And I wanted to just briefly go over some of the components or elements that went into the bridge design process. I know that MCL has some interest in understanding, what sort of protocols and processes and approaches we've taken for designing the bridges. And then Sherry's also with us today, and she's going to give us an update on the botanical surveys that were completed this year in support of this year's construction and next steps for that. So most of you are familiar with the project. It might not be interesting graphic for you. This is Azalea Hill project. We've broken it up into 3 phases. Phase 1 is over the top of Azalea Hill. And this segment of the trail will be hiker and equestrian only, no mountain bikes. And the goal really of the entire project is to both provide a connection, a road-free connection to the Pine Mountain area, and then also to protect some of the very sensitive plants and resources that are on Azalea Hill that have been stressed by user groups. So the overall concept is to provide 2 methods or 2 trails to get through that area, one over the top of Azalea Hill and then one actually along Alpine Lake. And about halfway down Alpine Lake, what's labeled as the phase, the project is actually on a historic road. So those are the 3 phases. And if you actually go out to the project site, you'll see some signage that we got some help from One Tam in producing to just kind of communicate the project goals to the public. Sean could give an update on the dates when these signs were installed, but they're out there providing people information about the serpentine habitat that we're trying to protect for them to help, be it staying off restricted trails based on your user group, and staying out of some of the areas that we have identified as being closed. In terms of funding, we've been pretty successful so far. Of the 3 phases, we're working on the phase 1 as kind of an ongoing basis as part of trail maintenance. The phase 2 project, which we started this year, is partially funded by a grant through CCNB, which was great having their help. And then another component of that paying for actually one of the large bridges, one of the largest bridges on the entire project, is being funded by the Emig Mount Tam Trust. And that's the Bullfrog Bridge that I'll go over here shortly. The phase 3 project, probably, definitely a couple years out. We're still looking for funding. As you know, the Water District doesn't have a lot of money available to fund these sorts of projects. So we're really relying on seeking grant monies from outside sources. We had submitted a grant back in February to the State Parks Recreational Trails Program. We've got some positive response from them, and we're just generally waiting to hear back and see if we were successful. So kind of switching gears and talking about the bridge designs. So my background is in environmental engineering. And so I had kind of a large role in working on many bridge projects for trails around the Bay Area, the Bay Trail, Napa River Trail. I got some experience and was able to help facilitate this process along. And when you're talking about design approaches, people throw out all these different standards and codes. And of them, you have AASHTO, the American Society of State Highway Transportation Officials, Caltrans. The U.S. Forest Service has their own bridge design criteria and specs for their own bridges on federal lands. State Parks does as well. And then when you get down into the nitty gritty and looking at different components of bridges, whether they're railings, you have actual building codes that you have to follow, whether it be for the height of the railing, the strength of the railing, and whatnot. So I'm going to generally, which of these do you choose? And for our particular project, it's really a combination of all of them. So we're kind of picking and choosing from different scenarios with the aid of a structural engineer, and then just knowing what our own user groups are doing out there. So, whether they're equestrian use or bicycle or pedestrians, we can kind of pull from each one of these different approaches and come up with a design that's both resilient, functional, and also something that we can install in a location that is pretty remote. So in terms of design, I'm just going to kind of focus on some of the big things that we look at. This is really summarizing a pretty detailed process. And when engineers are talking about bridges for trails, we're really talking about dead load, which is the weight of the material. So if it's a timber bridge, this is the weight of their girders, the weight of the railings, the weight of the decking. The bridge has to be able to support its own weight. So that's the first element. And then you actually start looking at live loads. So this is your pedestrians. If you want to design the bridge to be able to support a particular vehicle, what's the width of that vehicle? What's the length? What's the footprint of the tire? And then also for our scenario, because we're designing the bridges to be able to support equestrian use, we also have to design for that element. And in general, just given the size of the bridges, the pedestrian loading condition, which is the terminology they use is the 90 pounds per square foot design scenario, is really what controls the thickness of your girders, or really how stiff the bridge has to be. And the images on the right-hand side give you an idea of what that design criteria is trying to get to. It's a little blurry, but the top image shows you generally what about a 50 pounds per square foot image of people on a bridge would look like. So this is definitely not COVID friendly, the top. And then the middle picture gives you an idea of about what 100 pounds per square foot. So if we had that many people, that sort of density sitting on the bridge, that bridge would more or less support 100 pounds per square foot. So you can see the bridges are robust. They're definitely designed to hold up. The next thing that we looked at, and one of the kind of secondary goals of the project, was to actually have an emergency vehicle route through the project area for us to use our UTV. So these are those small Ranger vehicles. They're about 8 feet long, the wheelbase, and they're about 48 inches wide from center of tire to center of tire. So we designed the bridges to be able to support those UTV vehicles. Not that we're planning on driving them all the time, but it will be an emergency option for us to deal with emergency situations. And then the other item that we integrated into the design is really the equestrian use. So the standard code is to actually use a design weight of 1,000 pounds. And most people will be like, well, that's not a very big horse. So that 1,000 pounds is actually distributed over a 4-inch by 4-inch square. So you can imagine how much force is going through a horse's hoof. And that's the kind of the design scenario that we're supposed to design to. In reality, horses weigh more than 1,000 pounds. You add that with the riders, but overall, you wouldn't expect that more than one hoof would be providing more than 1,000 pounds over a 4-inch square area. When it turns out, when you look at all the design calculations, like I said, the pedestrian loading scenario, that really governs how strong the bridge is. And the equestrian scenario is the scenario that actually governs how thick your decking is. So using a 3x12 redwood decking material is not strong enough to support that 1,000 pounds per 4 square 4x4 square inches. So you actually have to use a thicker material. And then in addition to the dead and live loads that I was talking about, there's also the other loads that we have to design to: seismic, wind, hydraulic. Is the bridge flooded? How do you account for that in the design? And what we did is, I kind of alluded to, is that we're kind of pulling our designs from different sources, is actually to stick with something really similar to the U.S. Forest Service timber bridge design. And it's a glue lam bridge. That's the main girder component on the very bottom of the bridge on the top right-hand corner. And that enables you to use smaller stock material that's actually fabricated in a controlled environment. So you can use longer girders that aren't as deep. And for our particular bridges, we went with an Alaskan yellow cedar that's a lot more resistant to the elements. It also allowed us to avoid using any sort of preservatives in the wood, spraying that could potentially get into the reservoirs. We also use redwood decking because it is very resilient to the elements, as most folks know. And these timber bridges will be applying at all of our sites where the top of bank to top of bank width is between 15 and 30 feet. And about 30 feet, it actually gets a little more economically viable to go with a steel structure. So you'll see on the next bridge I described, that's why we went with the steel bridge. The width of the timber bridges will be 6.5 feet. That's the narrowest inside dimension. So more than enough room to have a couple pedestrians walking, 2 people walking side by side, and even a horse. The kind of guidelines for the minimum width for equestrian use is 5 feet. Obviously would be a horse walking single file across a bridge. And then because we will have both mountain bike uses and also equestrian uses, the standard codes require that your railings are actually 54 tall. Here's an example I pulled off the internet of pretty much a textbook US Forest Service bridge. We don't have any cascade channels like that on Azalea Hill, but more or less that gives you a good idea of what it's going to look like. You can see the laminated beam girder that's holding up the entire bridge, and then the railings that are relatively high for standard use. The next bridge, the bridge that's actually being funded by the AMIC Trust, is a steel truss bridge. You've probably seen these around everywhere. Kind of the defining characteristics of them are typically they have a camber, so you can see the bridge itself is curved. These bridges are ordered in sections. And for our scenario, we have an 80-foot bridge, so we're ordering it in 2 sections, and then that bridge will actually be put together on site and then hoisted into place with a crane. And for our project, this particular bridge is actually being installed at Site 1, thankfully, which is right next to the Bullfrog Road. So we've got plenty of access. The crane can actually be sitting on the existing road without having to do any additional disturbance. The steel truss bridges are typically made out of weathering steel. It's a resilient steel material that actually, as it weathers, it produces an oxide finish on the outside of it. It gets like a deep red kind of brick color, and it actually protects the steel from further corrosion. Just like the timber bridges, we're going to be using redwood decking and railing on the steel bridge. The total span of this particular bridge is going to be 80 feet. And just like the timber bridges, we're going with a 6.5 foot wide, narrowest width on the bridge. And then the railings will also be 54 inches tall. And here's an example, I think that Sean found online, showing kind of what the bridge would look like. It's got that kind of deep red rusty color to it. In our scenario, we would be doing pretty much the same exact thing as this. We'd have the wood decking, and then you can see the wood railing on the actual bridge itself. And then I'm going to go ahead and pass things off to Sherry. And then at the end, if you all have any questions about the bridge stuff, I'm more than welcome to answer any of those questions. So with further ado, go for it, Sherry.
Great, thanks. Good to be with you all again. I always like to go back to why are we doing this? So there was 2 key things that the district felt were problematic, and the responsible thing was to address them. One is erosion caused by the social trails. You all probably know Azalea Hill is a really popular place, and there's a lot of folks using it, and there's a lot of trails out there. This is an example on the left of a spot that is within phase 2. As Aaron showed you, is what we're focusing on right now. There's lots of others, some are worse than this photo. And another thing that you will see all over on Azalea Hill is where the social trails go right through a patch of sensitive plants. So those are two things that, as Aaron already mentioned, are key for us to work to address. This particular photo is of a plant called hairy bird's beak, Cordylanthus pilosus, and it's not actually a rare plant in terms of being on the Native Plant Society's rare plant ranking, but it is a locally rare plant, so it is an example of one that we protect with the Azalea Hill plan. So I think Nona's question was something like, could you update us on how we're dealing with all the rare plants that are on Azalea Hill? So I'm just going to let you know how the protections we have in place played out in this year, what we've done so far in 2020. And probably some of you are familiar with the protections in place with the Azalea Hill plan, but so as I mentioned, we've got sensitive plants is sort of a broader category than just the rare plants. It's all of the ones that are on the Native Plant Society's rare plant ranking, in addition to ones that are maybe doing fine overall in California, but are not so common on Mount Tam. So where we find them, we'll be treating them the same as we would any rare plant. And what that protection is, for the one state and federally listed plant, it's just complete avoidance. There will be we will just reroute if there's some there. For everything else, there's a total of 18 taxa that we have found within the footprint that are on our list of sensitive plants. For all those others, we're going to do everything we can to avoid them. And if it's not possible, there is a mitigation and monitoring plan that we put in place over the course of a monitoring for 5 years. And so go ahead, Aaron, and hit the next slide. So actually, I shouldn't have said rare. I should have said sensitive. I put the wrong title here. But this shows you the surveys that we did in 2020. So even though there have been surveys previously in 2016 and 2018, so we generally know where the rare plants are. But when you've got so many annuals that from one year to the next may not be in exactly the same spot. Annual plants notoriously will have even order of magnitude or more variability from one year to the next. Maybe the plant loves, a wet January or whatever. You get a lot of variability. So each year we take a look at what we expect is the maximum we could possibly get done that year, and we do a plant survey for that area. And so Aaron, if you put your cursor along phase 2, it's the same areas that he already showed you that we're doing this year. So all those dots there are places where we found rare plants along what we expected work we thought we might get done 2020. Now the blue dots are the section that was slated for decommissioning this year. So in other words, decommissioning, I'll talk about that more in just a minute, but in addition to specific goals we have for restoring those areas, the first thing we've got to do is get out there and see if there's any rare plants that we need to avoid in our decommissioning work. Go ahead and hit the next slide, Aaron. So the great news for 2020 is that we were able to do 100% avoidance of all of the sensitive plants along phase 2. So to give you a sense of what that looks like, I know you all know Carl, Sanders, the two of us would go out there for each of these spots where the trail proposed alignment went through a sensitive plant population, and between Carl looking at the landscape and saying, well, here's an option, and say, oh no, there's some more plants over there that we need to avoid. And between the two of us, we'd come up with, try out a few possibilities, and we were able to avoid all of them. You can see one that's kind of about halfway through that section where we went way up north to avoid that serpentine outcrop. And as I think Carl's words were, only the botanists will understand. But what happens is when you pop out on that serpentine outcrop, you've got Mount Tam Lysyngia, which is in the rarest category, the 1B list. We've got the buckwheat. We've got Calamagrostis is serpentine reedgrass. So there's a bunch of rare plants there, and we were able to find ways to avoid everything on there. So go ahead and hit the next slide, please, Erin. So I'm going to talk just briefly about decommissioning. You don't need to read all the fine print here. This is just a chance for me to share with you an example of how it works internally for us. This is a copy of something that is available as a georeference PDF. What that means is folks are going with their devices out in the field, an iPad or a phone, and there's going to be a little flashing blue dot that shows them exactly where they are. And so that way they can be out in the field and see where I've made maps of different things. And so this particular, it's about 1 mile of trail that we are looking at decommissioning. It may or it may not happen this year. If it happens next year, I'll do another survey. But the take home on this particular stretch was the whole eastern half. It did have a handful of rare plants, but they're very discrete ones that I can mark really clearly and are really easy to avoid. And so that is an area that after we do our training and we maintain monitoring on site every day, we can have the youth crew come out and work on those areas where there's some real erosion issues. That photo I showed you a couple of slides back is in fact in that stretch. And then the west half, you pop out into this serpentine area and there's lots of rare plants up there. It's not just a few you can go around, but it's really in places a carpet of it. So we've decided that's just not a place we can have a youth crew up there working. We're going to have a biological monitor there at all times. It'll either be myself or I've got a couple of seasonals who are working with me who have come to know these plants really well. So any work we do up there is going to be first do no harm. We want to restore the issues with, you want to reshape. If you've got gullying where water has made the trail into a creek, we want to deal with compaction issues. In some places, we'll be bringing in seeds. We want to obscure trails so people stop choosing taking that route. But we also need to protect the plants. So that just gives you a summary of some of the avoidance we've done with plants. So I can pass it off or take questions if you've got any.
So, I have one question. So Sherry, you're doing this one phase at a time, doing this kind of intense, detailed alignment and assessment as you go. Because there were concerns, I think, it's phase 3 is the third, the section that goes up the old alignment of the Liberty Gulch Road and continues on, and there are a number of rare plants along that stretch. So it looks like you're doing a very detailed analysis as you go, phase by phase. So any questions? Eva, you may have some questions, or others.
Perry Thomas has her hand raised.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Sherry, I was wondering, so it sounds like when you're decommissioning the trails, you're really setting it up geologically, soil-wise and water-wise, and then allowing nature to take its course, and not necessarily actively revegetating. And if that's correct, is there also plans to continue to weed those areas to make sure that the vegetation stays what you think it ought to be there? Or what's kind of the maintenance plan or revegetation plan?
Yeah, all of the above. Everything you said is true somewhere. There are places where nature will take care of things. We need to deal with the water issue, where maybe we just have a little bit of shaping that we do to make sure that the water gets off the trail instead of staying on the trail, or dealing with compaction issues. In some places, we won't need to do anything. We'll just need to make sure people aren't going there anymore. In some places, it's going to take something a little more intensive. There may be locations where seeding is appropriate. But basically, it's every single spot we look at and decide what's going to be the best match. In terms of our monitoring, we have 5 years of monitoring. It's the alignment itself. Where you see the lines on this map right here, the green, yellow, and blue, that's 5 years of monitoring. And the basic objective is to make sure we didn't make anything worse. So there's places where this trail is going through intact native grassland. And so it's on us to do an annual monitoring, and that includes dealing with any invasive species that are coming in and maintaining basically the same component of native plants that we had previously. Part of how we accomplished, and that includes also the decommissioning. So all of this, once we initiate work in a certain area, that starts the clock on the 5 years of monitoring and dealing with invasive species that are coming in, and if need be, in a location, something a little more active. The decommissioning, often we've got a very narrow footprint. You know, we're not coming in with machinery typically unless we really have a major compaction issue. And so this is generally going to be hand tools. So our footprint is pretty narrow on that. It's actually more along the alignment where I'm really most going to be watching it like a hawk, you know, in terms of things that could be coming in because of the disturbance, and let's catch that early and deal with it.
Great, thanks.
Linda Novi has a question. Linda?
Yes, well, it looks like you're putting a tremendous amount of thought and care into the bridges and into the biological resources, so it's really fun to see how you're approaching it. I had a question just for clarification. Is this phase 1, is that going to be is that the hiker equestrian portion?
Yep.
And then also that's also where you're going to be monitoring, right, as well, to make sure there's no biological invaders or how our plants are doing?
That's actually true for the entirety of the project. And so, I mean, my background's botany, that's what I focus on and what I've been talking about, but actually we've got a whole suite of biological things we monitor for, and we're working with as needed consultants and other folks. We've got an aquatic ecologist who's been helping us to make sure we're, you know, watching for frogs and turtles and everything else. So that actually, all the biological monitoring, that applies to the entirety of the project.
Okay, so what I think what I was trying to get at after I clarified that is also,
Sure.
What kind of monitoring will there be to ensure that the designated user groups are the only ones using that trail? Because, and how do you then align and sync up with enforcement, or, you know, how does that work? Because we want to protect it, and it's going to be very special.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think there's, Sean may want to chime in on this too, but essentially, I'll start by saying the plan specifically calls out that our rangers will be involved in keeping an eye on and, when necessary, enforcing the rules. Our plan also calls out that part of the plant monitoring I'm doing is keeping an eye on, there's some pretty obvious signs when people are not, you can tell when the bikes have been coming through. And so that's something we can kind of keep an eye out for when we're doing our other monitoring, and then working with our rangers, you know, address that as needed. But also there's design elements to make certain areas inviting to bikes and other areas not so inviting to bikes. So design elements will help with that. And then I think, you know, some of it, this is a mountain that so many people care about. So some of it is outreach, communication, helping to for everyone to feel some ownership. When I hear you share our view that this is a special place, I think, if you're out there and you see something problematic, maybe you'll give us a call and help us. So communication with folks who know and care about this place is probably a part of it too.
Yeah, so I'll just chime in. I think Sherry nailed all of the things that we're going to be doing as well in the plan. It does call out that we're going to be signing all of the social trails as closed. So we started doing that. The benefit of us doing that is that it allows us to enforce those closed areas, so rangers can ticket anybody in those closed areas. As part of the signage process that you saw, we're working with OneTam to develop temporary signs, which is the one that Aaron showed today, but we're also working on developing permanent kiosks that'll go at the Azalea Hill parking lot and at the Bullfrog Bridge. And those will really promote, you know, our regulations and, you know, identify which routes are for which uses. And if you are caught on Azalea Hill proper and it's on a bike, you will be ticketed for that violation. And we will increase our rangers patrol. That was one of the things we called out in the plan. So when we do get this project completed, you know, that will become something that we're patrolling on a more regular basis, really to, right, put that flag in the ground that this is the types of use are allowed in these very specific areas. So that is something we'll be looking very closely at, Linda.
Okay, Any
Yeah.
more questions?
I don't see anyone, but if anyone has any questions, now is the time to ask them. And Sean, with increasing region patrols, how about increasing rangers along with it? Just making a plug. Thank you.
Just making a plug. Hey, I just want to say that this is all very, very reassuring, because we had MCL had some reservations because there are rare plants along the route. There's a native grassland at least. There may be more than one. I was conscious of one on a tour. And so this is what this is demonstrating, is the meticulous work that MMWD is committed to doing in order to make this project work for everybody. So, and for all the plants and animals. So thanks very much for that, Sherry and Aaron, for taking us through this. So next, I think, Sean, you have a program that you're going to tell us about. And
yeah,
also
and I'll be brief because I know we're kind of running over on our time. But so, a couple of months ago, I think we gave you all an update on how we were seeing use change on the watershed in response to shelter in place and COVID generally, just that we're seeing a lot more people on the watershed. So we came up with a number of adaptive measures that we could start to roll out to help us address those. And one of those was that we started to look at an existing program we have, which we call our Watershed Ambassador Program, and think of it slightly different as a watershed greeter program. And so we've rolled this out about a month and a half ago, and we started with one event every week, usually Friday afternoons. Our volunteer coordinator was coordinating a group of people to go out on the watershed, set up a station, and really just be greeters to welcome people and to make sure that they were using safe practices while they were visiting. We've expanded that to be twice a week now, and we've also bolstered that program by taking our one dedicated watershed ambassador who had been working in our kiosk, and he is now helping us with this watershed greeter program during the week. And to supplement his work in the kiosk, we've actually hired a temporary staff person to work our kiosk at Sky Oaks on the weekends. So these are two really good things that we're just getting more interaction with our visitors. And we've gotten a really positive responses from people just wanting to see staff out on the watershed to talk about the issues that they're seeing. And so we hope to expand this even farther in the coming months and really start to look at not only having stationary watershed greeter programs, but also more mobile experiences where we can have, in the future, even volunteers that are just out on the watershed walking the trails and making sure that people are, following safe practices as well as, not violating regulations. They'll never be in an enforcement category, but they will have a direct line to our rangers. It's just more eyes on the watershed is what we're hoping for. So that's a really positive program. Happy to answer questions about it. Otherwise, I just want to take 1 second and give you all an update on a busy week that we've got coming up. We've got a lot of board items coming that are watershed related for next week. And I wanted to give you all a little plug for what those are. On the 15th, we have a board of directors meeting, and Aaron and I have 2 items going to that meeting. One of them that Aaron's leading up is our Lagunitas stewardship restoration planning effort. So we got a grant from California Department of Fish and Wildlife in the amount of $300,000 to do planning for future restoration projects on Lagunitas Creek. We went through a request for proposals and interviewed a number of consulting firms to help us with the design of those restoration projects. And we selected ESA to assist us. And that's going to be a really great team because they've got a lot of local experience on previous restoration and modeling work that we hope to leverage to develop some great plans. And this grant that we have will take us to 30% design. And then we've got one grant application being reviewed by the CDFW's FRGP, Fisheries Restoration Grant Program, in the amount of, I think it was 700, I think Aaron cut it to 550,000 on me for planning to get us to 100% design. So we're hopeful about that grant as well. And the other item that we have on the Tuesday night meeting is a new forestry contract. So we went out through a bid process to get a new contractor to come assist us with forestry restoration work in areas that have been impacted by sudden oak death. So we are really looking at scaling our vegetation management up under our biodiversity fires and fuels plan. And one of those activities is our forestry restoration work. So that's on the Tuesday night meeting. And then on that Thursday, the 17th, we have a watershed committee meeting. And we've got 3 items there. We have our biodiversity fires and fuels integrated plan annual report. So this will summarize all the vegetation management work that we've done over the last fiscal year, how we spent the money, how much money we spent, how many acres we achieved. We did hit our first year targets. at a lower price tag than we had anticipated, which is really good because we didn't have our full budget for that program. So happy to come and back to another meeting of MCL and present that if that's of interest. And then we also are going to be introducing a preliminary drone program. So this is something that we're looking at helping to augment our ranger staff for search and rescue and wildfire response. And we're going to roll out some concepts about how we could develop a program for the watershed where the rangers could be equipped with a drone in case of emergency. And we'll be very clear and transparent on how that would be done and what it would be used for. So a preliminary plan will be reviewed at the Watershed Committee. And then we also have a new agreement with the California Conservation Corps for this next year to help us support with trails management as well as vegetation management. And it's going to be in the amount of about $195,000 to help us with this next year, which is really good. And then the next day on the 18th, we have a district operations committee meeting, and we've got a culvert update, which we've provided to this group. And you've all seen the PWA assessment that Mike led up in the past and all of the culverts that we have on the watershed and the 30 or so that we're prioritizing right now for repairs. So that's going to be an update just on where we are. And for this year, we've got 15 culverts that we're going to repair. Those are on Alpine Bond Tempe Dam Road, Fish Grade Road, Warren Springs Road, and then in the Deer Park area. So those are just the updates I wanted to provide, and I think that's all I got for you, Nona.
It's a lot. That's a lot of material. Actually, we were kind of ahead of ourselves, so we're now right on track for the overall agenda. So thanks for any questions for Sean before we go on to Marin County Parks. So that brings us to a side of Marin County Parks. So we spend a lot of time following the road and trail management plan and the open spaces, and we spend less time keeping track of all the work being done by what we'll call sort of the parks and landscape facility side of the house. And so Tara is going to bring us up to date on some projects that have been completed and a number that are in progress. So Tara, are you on deck? There you are. Yeah. Okay. Do you want to? Are you going to share your screen?
Yeah. I've got sound. I have two devices, so you're going to have to see. I'm going to do my screen share. Right.
Okay. Great.
All right. How's that work? I see it on my phone, so I think you all see it.
Yeah. Right.
All right.
Okay. Thanks very much. Go ahead. Okay, Tara, we're not hearing you.
There. How about now?
Now we can hear you. Right.
All right. I didn't get very far. Just to repeat, I'm Tara McIntyre. I'm the interim principal landscape architect. And if you all didn't know, Steve Petterly, my predecessor, retired back in March. And so I'm here and I'm really excited to present before all of you. And so with that, this is an overview of projects that we have on our table, our drawing boards for 2021. And first I want to kick it off with just recently completed, just to show that even though it's last year, but kind of some fun things that we were able to finish before life changed. The bike park, this is a project that was master planned long ago. Al will know every ounce of this, but the original plan had a shade structure in it. And it took a long time, but we finally were able to get something really beautiful out there and in keeping with the other elements in the gateways. And it's a well-used, well-loved structure that, especially with the park getting so much use now during the shelter in place, it's been really appreciated. This is the house out at Deer Island. It was serving as our naturalist. Shannon Burke's office was out there, and we've been trying to little by little attend to some maintenance issues, but also with a longer term goal of being able to use this for public outings or programs and things like that. So we just replaced the stairs and did some gutters. So again, kind of taking care of what we have. And you'll see that throughout this whole slide presentation.
Tara, does that mean that
Oh.
that facility will be open to people who are desperate and have just walked around Deer Island?
I'm not sure yet. I think right now we're just trying to get the upgrades, and I'm not sure about the long-term plan for it. But I know one of the things we have talked about is being able to have, Shannon has wanted to be able to have a place where she can either give like little classes or things like that. So I think it's our first goal is to make it publicly accessible.
Right.
And
right,
then
okay.
go from there. But yeah, it's a great little house. Lagoon Park, this is one of our most popular facilities. You can see at the top, and if you can see my mouse, this is what was there. Picnic tables are just kind of in the mulch, and now we've upgraded 3 of those areas so they're ADA accessible. There are new picnic tables as well, and so that was a nice addition. And then this is what we have in progress. Most of the projects you're going to see are in various ranges of stages, from design to implementation or almost ready for implementation. The first being, we'll start at down the southern end of the county and Mill Valley pathway. We have not addressed this portion of the pathway. You may all recall that we did the repaving, a pretty considerable size project from Blythedale down to Almonte, which is right here, right below the high school, Tam High. This project from Almonte down to Gate 6 has not been touched since 1981. And it's cracked, it's pitted, it's really in need of a maintenance overhaul because there's a larger planning project that you're all familiar with, Bothine Marsh. And so our immediate plan of action is to address the safety and sort of function of the pathway. So we're doing a microsurfacing. It's almost like, I think most people are familiar with like a slurry seal. It won't change the grade of the pathway, but it will help fill and smooth out the inconsistencies. So it will greatly, the users of the path will be very happy. Also along the pathway, we're working on plans for this right now. We identified 2 of the 4 bridges that are on the pathway that have some deterioration. And so we're trying to assess sort of what is the scope of work, how are we going to do it? And so we're working on plans right now for 2 of the 4 bridges.
I see one, Rick Freitas had his hand up.
Oh.
I was wondering if there's any plans in the future to elevate this path due to climate change and sea level rise.
That is a question. That's what we're looking at in terms of the Bothine Marsh, the larger planning process that's being run by Veronica Pearson and in conjunction with the Parks Conservancy and One Tam. So there's a larger planning effort to look at potential options.
Thank you.
So skipping, kind of going over to the east a little bit, north, McNears Park. Again, this is one of our most popular parks. If you've ever gone there on the weekend, this parking lot is full. And this is one of our parks that, is taking care of what we have. We've done the whole entryway and improved the asphalt and basically redone it. And then the parking lot is really degraded. And so as we look at maintenance improvements, there's also an opportunity to improve the function. And if you drive into McNears, you don't quite know where to go. There's these really weird islands and these crazy nautical themed, like when they used to cut down telephone poles and make them look like art in parks. Well, that's McNears. And we're going to redesign the parking lot in terms of islands. And also this is our opportunity to partner with McStop and to be able to address some stormwater treatment and increase also the shade trees. Bayside Park, I don't know how many people are familiar with this park. It is a tiny little pocket park if you're driving from downtown San Rafael over to McNears. If you blink, you will drive by it, but it is beloved. It's this wonderful little gem that we maintain and operate. And DPW was able to secure funding as part of their capital improvements project plan for accessibility. And so this entire park is getting completely renovated. So all new pathways, it'll be 100% universally accessible. So that doesn't mean one path, it means every part of that park will be accessible. So this is really exciting, new furnishings, it's just getting a complete facelift. And will start in construction in spring. Bucks Landing, our newest park property. This is, if you haven't been out there, it's really a great kind of funky little place right now. And we've just started making some minor improvements just for access and signage, which you'll see on the next slide. But we have a little project that we're hopefully getting out to bid here soon for an ADA parking stall. You can kind of see here with a restroom, a portable restroom and screen, kind of like what's out at White's. Oh, my brain just stopped working. White House Pool, there we go. And then a little picnic area. Again, all ADA accessible. And as I said, we've also used this opportunity because we haven't dealt with parks for signage. Most of you are familiar with all the work that we've done in open space with our new wayfinding signage and entry signage. Well, as part of that greater sign program, parks is part of it, as are our pathways. And this property is allowing us to do some testing and kind of get our feet wet, so to speak, about what colors work, what's the type of icons, we'll just keep it simple. And then also new entry signs. So you'll see that when you go out there as well. So let's zoom to the northern parts of the county. Stafford Lake Park. I know this park has been getting a lot of use and it's very well loved. This is a project that was brought to us by the Friends of Stafford Lake Bike Park. They're kind of all become all the rage in terms of in Europe, and they're popping up all over the United States. It's a pump track, but it's an all-weather pump track, and it's for everyone. It's not just bikes. So you can do scooters, you can do, wheelchairs, use them, skates, use them. I mean, they're kind of, it's not limiting. So this is a project that we're working on with friends right now and planning on that. There's the Stafford Lake. So a lot of people get to Stafford Lake Park on their bikes, or they walk along the bike path along Nevada Boulevard. Now that ends once you hit the park, kind of where the bridge is and the little fishing island. So during the master planning process, we had a lot of feedback from people about walking. And we also know that's one of the most popular things that people do as part of our visitor services, visitor survey that we performed a couple years ago. And so creating a pathway along the shoreline to get people off of the road, once the roadway inside the park, to access the rest of the park is one of our goals. And so this is going to increase the usability of the area. So this is where all the hammocks are. This is kind of that first part of the park, and there's Stafford Lake here. And so would be a multi-use path. So not only would it be a bike path, it's a multi-use path, but it's also allowing for people to access our picnic areas that are kind of scattered about. So improving more universally accessible places in our park. And I'll talk more about it. You've probably seen for bike racing. We'll talk about that in this next slide. Is one of the things that we've hosted at this park for many years is the NorCal events, which is a high school mountain bike racing events. They happen now and again, and it's a really wonderful opportunity that we can provide. And in conjunction with that multi-use trail I just showed you is to extend the trail all the way along the pathway and connect it into the disc golf areas so we get the mileage. Well, this trail would also be like biker hiker opportunity, and allow for us to go in and reassess the existing layout of the disc golf, which is really important and very popular as well. So it's getting us in there to take a look at what's there, do an assessment, and then potentially be able to host better events and provide more opportunities for people. This is not a fancy project, but again, infrastructure in terms of there's a roadway. So this is the bike park. This is a parking lot, and this is the little pond that's out there. And Stafford's the lake is that way. There's a culvert. There's two culverts in here, and this roadway. Sorry, I'll go up here. It doesn't do well in the weather. It's just an old mulch farm road, and so it's very muddy. So by making these improvements and raising the road, changing the road grade, like material, so it's all weather, it'd just be compacted base rock. We can also, again, add an amenity. So we're going to include an ADA parking stall out here to help access future planned amenities.
Can I ask a question, Tara?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Go back to that. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Now, the walking trail is along the trees at the bottom in the bottom right corner.
Yeah, it's right here. Yep.
Yeah. Right, okay. And are you going to do anything to that trail which goes on around and through the through some willows, as I recall, and then eventually goes up? I've forgotten the name of the trail.
Terwilliger Trail.
It's Terwilliger. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
and it starts here. So the Terwilliger Trail. So the trail starts here at the parking lot, and then
right.
it comes around the backside of the pond, and then it's kind of like a dirt path. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
That section, as I talked about, like right now we're focusing on the bike trail I just talked about. Yeah. There's sort of 3 phases to it, and it's doing the first phase over by the picnic areas. That's more of a multi-use path, and then the other 2 subsequent phases would be more pedestrian and bike. And this is sort of this middle section, if we were looking at that trail, but it would connect all the way back to the path.
Yeah, okay.
McGinnis light poles, again, just taking care of what we have. These are been around a long time. They're very popular, and just dealing with some corrosion and making them last for a lot longer. Black Point, we have 2 boat launches, 2 of our most popular facilities. And we applied for a grant last year from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and we were awarded $75,000. So with that, we will be improving the site furnishings, adding a new shade structure, and also adding irrigation and planting. Paradise, down to the Tiburon Peninsula here. So we've had a long issue with the slope along this side, and just where my cursor is, that's sort of the piers off to the left. We've done some repairs in the past. These are the 2 current slope slides right now. And you can see how extensive it is from this photo below. We're working with Anchor QEA. I don't know if you're familiar with that consulting firm, but they're an engineer design firm. And they're helping us to do a feasibility study and develop some options for potential repairs. The thing that's exciting about this is DPW is also working on a pilot beach replenishment project, which is also in the same area. So we're trying to find ways to collaborate and form a partnership where when we are able to implement, that we can potentially do this together. Paradise Sewer Extension. I don't know if you all know this, but the restroom, which is right here at Paradise, and here's the pier, and there's where the slides are to my right. That's a septic field right here. So one of our longer term goals is to improve the restroom and replace the restroom. But the first thing we want to do is get it off of a septic, because it limits how much capacity we can have. And so this project is just an infrastructure project to connect to the Tiburon Sanitary District.
Oh, interesting.
Quarter-Meter Marsh. This is, I don't know if you're all familiar, but if you're standing taking this photo, Hal Brown is to your back and to the right, and the hospital's to your back and left. There's a little bridge that you can't see because it's underwater. Oh, there's the bridge, and then the pathway's underwater, and then it's
through there many times.
Yeah, it's floods a lot, or if it's muddy, it's usually muddy if we had rain. So this project is going to maintain the same footprint but it's going to span that area with a mix of a bridge. And this is the bridge. I mean, just a concept, but 110-foot bridge with a boardwalk. Again, because of rail, we have very small window. So we're looking at 2021 implementation for this project. And this is the final project I wanted to show you, and it's not parks, but it's something that is I thought you all might want to hear about. Is as part of it's a kind of a combination of just dealing with use, and these are our waste receptacles for dog waste, although they get used for many other things. Is an opportunity here to improve that. This receptacle over here is what we have prototyped, and they're based on kind of those standard NPS receptacles, but they're more ADA accessible. And we had them design them special with the smallest opening possible. So it's just dogs, so kind of Great Danes and Elkhounds or something, is sort of like, okay, we can handle that just a minute. We don't want people bringing their trash in and, you know, filling them full, because these are serviced by a wet dog waste company that picks it up for us. And as part of that, we took it as an opportunity. Hey, how can we start messaging? How can we start communicating to the public a little more, like what, you know, why you need to pick it up? Because I know it drives me crazy when I see the bags along the trail. So this is as part of the messaging. And we are going to try and do two, batteries mad, sorry. We're going to try and put more dog dispensers and move the trash receptacle, the dog waste receptacles down the trail more, so the dogs can run, do their thing, you pick it up, you put it in the trash, and you go on your way. So hopefully we'll see less bags. So I thought you all might appreciate that one.
Oh, vital, yes.
And with that, any questions?
Yeah, we've got a minute or two. We want to hear from Max also. So any questions? There's a huge amount of work going on, Tara. I'm really impressed. Any questions for Tara?
I do want to ask one thing. So Tara, Bucks Landing is actually open to the public, because I find it very confusing when I drive by there, and I want to go down there, but I felt like, well, it's not open yet. And my second question is, I have a little kayak. Will we be able to launch from there? People that do that kind of thing? Thank you.
Yes, and Max, and I may have, Ari would know more, but I was under the impression it's open. We haven't officially opened, you know, like we're not, it's kind of like Bowman, it's there, it's open. Of course, you know, you can use it. It's just, we're making it ready for people. But you can drive down there, absolutely. And you can launch your kayak too.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And all those boats there, what is going to happen with all the boats that are stored there right now?
So the boats that were on the actual Galenas Landing, the Bucks Landing property that we acquired, are no longer on that property. There's no boats remaining on that property. And that building that's inside of that square there, that was a pretty funky building. And actually there's, I think, 3 buildings in that square there. There's a couple small ones there on the left too. Those have all been removed. So all that's the whole county, the property that we own, and they were all removed prior to the county ownership of the property.
So all the other is show us just what is not county property.
So all those boats on the right-hand side where Tara's cursor is, that's a separate property that's owned by family, the Smiths.
Yeah.
And then there's like a little white building that's like right above that red square. If you can see a tiny
right
little,
here.
that's where our cursor is now. That is a little tiny parcel that's owned by another family called the McKettys. And, you know, I think in general, the county is interested in potentially either ourselves or working with the state to acquire the adjoining parcels, because I think our vision for this site is being able to adapt to sea level rise and, you know, have a sort of adaptive shoreline there. And obviously those areas are already getting flooded at king tides.
Yeah.
So, so I think, you know, that's the vision. I think, you know, one of the things that for the site is, you know, like Tara mentioned, it's open to the public. We're doing some modest, you know, potential improvements to just make it accessible and safe and signed. But I think we're waiting until potentially there can be, you know, these other adjoining lots could potentially be acquired, and that would enable us to do a broader planning process for how to have a more, you know, evolving adaptive site.
Yeah, great. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Great.
So thanks very much, Tara. A wonderful, very comprehensive look at what the County Parks is doing. Excellent. So now, briefly, Max, because I'm running into a little time crunch here. Briefly, Max, you have been deploying and you've got people fighting fires and God only knows what else.
Yeah, it's a crazy time. But I'd say one of the things that's super exciting is Tara is amazing, and she's been taking a lot of the, you know, the approach that we've learned, whether it's with trails or veg management, of sort of incorporating looking at natural resources into our park planning. And so it's just, she's doing an amazing job of leading that team. And then in terms of, yeah, you know, I've been working partially on our COVID-19 response to the Marin Recovers effort of reopening. And one thing that's actually really nice now is the state is taking a stronger leadership role. And so more and more we're deferring to the state in terms of reopening guidance and sort of these tiers for reopening. It has its own challenges. The state sort of reversed its determination on which tier Marin was going to be in at the last minute on Monday. But I'm sure I could talk forever about it, but I'll just leave it at that we keep working on that effort. And then, yeah, you know, we've been just, you know, both adapting our parks to the smoke. We have a smoke plan that we, when the AQI goes above 150, we close our regional parks. So we've been sort of following that planning and closing our parks accordingly. And then our team has been supporting County Fire and the National Park Service. We've had, they're no longer on the incident, but we've had a chipper crew and our masticator working on the Woodward fire in support of those efforts. And, you know, it just sort of underlines how important the vegetation management work that we've been doing is. And yeah, I think, you know, the other thing that's really exciting is there's a lot of regional collaboration. I think our One TAM collaborative is connecting more and more. You know, we've already been well connected, but all of these events have helped us share information and bring our, you know, best practices even closer together. And then additionally, regionally, you know, we work really, really closely with Sonoma County and San Mateo County, who are very similar to us, but then also across the entire Bay Area with Together Bay Area.
Call from invalid number.
That's all I got, unless anybody has any questions.
I don't see any questions right now. Does anyone want to? This is your moment.
Okay.
Wait, I have a question.
Okay.
I have a question. Sorry, I was away talking with MCL president for part of your presentation, Max. I'm sorry, I missed it. I looked on the website to find out where we were with the bridge project in Cascade. You know how we had talked a couple of years ago that there'd be some kind of a timeline about where things were, and I wanted to find out where are we with, I know CEQA's in play, but where are we with it? And I think people want to understand when comments are due and what that comment period looks like so we can comment and be prepared for that. So where are we at with that?
Thanks, Linda. Yeah, we're not quite there yet. We're still, I mean, it's been a long, slow process, and we're still working on the, you know, CEQA document for that. And we'll update folks when we get to the point where we have, you know, more to report. But I think, you know, it's you know, just been a lot of work for that team Michelle, who's working closely on that with the consultant that we had. So I don't have anything to report right now, and I don't know that I think we're still sort of adapting our timeline. Yeah. I'll keep you posted. I can follow up.
You know, that'd be helpful. Just, you know, like we expect, you know, here's where we're at. Here's when public comments about approximately.
I don't think we know yet. I think, you know, we want to make sure we do a full analysis before we get to that point. And I'm not even sure when that's going to be done. So.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, thanks. Thanks very much, Max. And now we're going to turn to Bree and to Arlen Weinberger. But I also want to, my screen is covered now. Okay, Arlen and Bree, to catch us up on state parks. But I also want to remind you that we're going to adjourn after they do their thing with a tribute to Connie Berto from Linda. And so save time for that. So now, Bree, why don't we start out with you and then hear from Arlen also.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Well, I'll just give a brief update on the Redwood Creek Trail project. That project is currently in process. We have one of the bridges has been fully installed. Bridge 6, which is a 26-foot bridge over the only tributary that stays, that has running water all year. And we've had crews out there. This season has been a lesson in flexibility and resilience for sure. We've had our CCC crew started, and then they are a support organization for large fire responses. So they are now off the project, but we have an ACE crew that's continuing to work on the project now. They've been prepping the new trail surface, and then the new trail has started to be cut. It was being installed by a state parks equipment operator who works in the Monterey district, but they were called back to their district for fire response there in those parks. So the work is proceeding by hand for now, but we are making good progress on that project, which is great. We'll really have to stay tuned for what happens for the rest of the construction season to kind of see where we land in terms of what's completed for the year. So I can provide an update on that maybe later in the season.
Yeah.
And then I was just going to provide a very brief kind of update on the several small fires that we had in Marin State Parks. And then just kind of what our process is for responding to fires here in Marin and also throughout the state as state parks employees. So we had 2 small fires over the last month. One was on Jake's Island at China Camp State Park. It was about 1.5 acres. It was a relatively low intensity fire that was fully contained by hands-on by Marin County Fire in a very short period of time. As a resource advisor, I went out to that fire after the next day while Marin County Fire was continuing mop up and just did a brief assessment. It was relatively low intensity with no visible damage and no real suppression repair needed at this time. And then on September 16th, we had a small lightning fire within Samuel P. Taylor State Park. Again, Marin County Fire responded, and I responded as a resource advisor to the park. That fire was contained with all hand line and retardant drops. And so we'll work with Marin County Fire or internally look at if rehab is needed for that fire once the fire season is over.
Was the Jake's Island fire also lightning initiated?
No.
How could anybody start a fire on Jake's Island? I mean, nobody's supposed to be there.
That's correct. No one is supposed to be there. There's fencing and signage, but people do sometimes go out to Jake's Island, and it's surrounded by marsh, but it is kind of open oak woodland with grassland. Luckily, it was primarily a surface fire, low intensity surface fire.
Okay.
So that was very good.
Yeah.
And then the fire at Samuel P. Taylor was basically on the ridge between Barnaby Fire Road above Madrone and Devil's Gulch, kind of off trail, not next to any facilities. And there were several other lightning fires just off of the state park, out of the state park boundary, that were contained that same day very quickly. It's a little bit strange to talk about those small fires, given the situation that's happening in other places in our county and in state parks, but just wanted to give a brief update. And just wanted to kind of describe for you kind of what our process is in terms of fire response. We have lots of resource advisors trained at state parks, both in our district and across the state. And when a fire is potentially threatening a state park, our incident command system is kind of activated. And we have an agency representative who immediately starts attending the daily briefings and integrates into the IC. And then they request resource advisors. So for example, that's what happened for the small fire at Samuel P. Taylor. And so we have been on call for the Woodward fire, and the LNU Lightning Complex fire threatened both a Napa Valley State Park and Robert Louis Stevenson State Park. And so what we do as resource advisors is we engage with the fire response prior to the fire entering the park if we can, to develop scenarios for areas where potential suppression can be put in without significant natural resource impacts and cultural resource impacts. We actually have resource advisors that are cultural, natural, and we have other classifications, even rangers that can be resource advisors. And we respond all around the state. So we had some staff respond from the Bay Area district down to Santa Cruz, and then some up to Sonoma, Mendocino for the fires that were burning in those districts. And then we also assist with suppression repair. And so we've had staff that has been basically providing mutual aid to those districts as they repair the suppression that was installed in parks, specifically at Big Basin, and then at Austin Creek and Armstrong Redwoods is where our district has responded. So that's just kind of our process for fire response. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions. I think we were all aware you were not involved, of course, in the Big Basin fire, but that's really kind of an immense, almost tragedy, because it was the first state park after Yosemite, our first state park in California. So
yeah, our staff member Bill Miller was down there. He just returned yesterday, helping with suppression repair activities at that park unit. Sometimes that activity is limited as CAL FIRE needs to move resources to other fires, especially where we're still relatively early in our fire season. But they're doing what they can. But the losses at Big Basin were definitely significant.
Thank you. And Arlen, can you? You're muted now. You want to unmute yourself? Unmute yourself. Okay, good.
All right.
Yeah.
I know, and talk fast, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, of course, I know more about these days, more about China Camp than the other parks that I've been involved with. And it's good news for China Camp. We're actually doing very well. For those of you who don't know, I've just become a board chair for the for Friends of China Camp, which is the nonprofit that runs that park. There's a trail there before you get to Jake's Island, Turtleback, and we just opened a renewed ADA accessible trail. It was all done by volunteers, 800 hours of volunteer work with heavy equipment as well as hand shoveling and whatever. 30 volunteers worked on it. The Marin IJ had a nice story about this in July, And then we had a special dedication with certain limitations, of course, everybody wearing masks and not standing near each other on August 7th. And State Parks Superintendent Maria Mowry came to that and praised our work to the skies. And we also had our previous intern who's in a motorized wheelchair check it out to be sure she could go all the way around, and she
All
could.
the way around, amazing.
Which was nice. China Camp has hired a new park manager. We're not all volunteer, we're a nonprofit, but we have certain paid staff people. And Ian Nelson is going to be very key in managing operations.
Working with Martin, we're working with
Martin is executive director.
Right, right.
Which is kind of a different role than managing the operations.
Yes.
Although there's a certain amount of overlap. We also have 2 interns now, young women, college age, hire $15 an hour, and they do various things. Membership is way up. It was 1,400 members at the end of last year, and already this year we're up to 2,400.
Right.
Which is just astonishing because, you know, the park has been closed a lot. Part of those memberships is due to people buying trail passes, annual passes, that kind of thing. If they do that, they are then considered a member. They've made a donation and they count as members. We get them on their mailing list. The visitation is record high this year. And I think part of it is because we have a beach. It's a small beach, but it's a beach, and it's a lot closer than going out to Point Reyes, especially if the park's been closed. So the holiday weekends we've been super busy, which is good because people are supposed to, and in fact do, if it's enforced, pay for parking. We have volunteers in the parking lots to encourage them to do so, which helps a lot. So the community, also community support is way up. And by community support, I mean people who are actually making donations directly to the park. So that helps. So we're doing financially better to date than we were at this time last year, unlike most parks. The road that floods a lot, that goes through Samuel P. Taylor, through, where am I, China Camp, that's a county park, and there's crews out there, last week anyway, last time I looked, from the county that are going to put in new culverts underneath the road where it's at its low point there. I don't know if in the winter it floods. And this is going to help get more water from one side to the other and into that marsh that's away from the bayside. What else? Well, a couple of things. Angel Island, in case you don't know, the ferry is running again on a limited reservation only basis, but you can go to Angel Island these days. Last time I checked, you could only go Thursday through Sunday with a limitation of about 100 people on the boat, sort of similar to Alcatraz, but it's a state park that's open. Mount Tam, don't know that much about it, but right now I know the visitor center is closed. The Gravity Car Barn at East Peak is closed. They're sort of fall into the category of museums, and all museums are still closed, including things like that, including our little museum at China Camp. The state park hiking program is kind of on hold. There were several programs that were run by Friends of Mount Tam, which the state has kind of taken over. They're not really run by Friends anymore. So a lot of those things are kind of up in the air right now. The campgrounds are open with no fires and no group campgrounds. And I know at China Camp, we have restrictions on the campgrounds as to how many people can be there, small groups, distance, all those kinds of things. Lots of cleaning of bathrooms and all that. We have campground hosts there, two sets of them. One is new and one are veterans, and they keep an eye on the campground, which is good. Let's see, what else? Oh, I was just going to mention the Redwood Creek Trail, I know, is being I was out there, I could see them working. But meanwhile, that bridge that was out for a long time, the point is that the trail as it is now in its current location is open all the way from Muir Woods to Muir Beach. You can walk the whole way.
Oh.
Well, that's it in a nutshell, and I know you want to do something else.
Okay, good.
Questions that I could answer? I don't know.
Any questions? Yeah.
I just want to say that I've been out there quite a bit, mainly because of the smoke, and there's less smoke there.
Me too.
But what's really encouraging, because we're all involved in diversity right now, is I've seen a tremendous growth in the amount of Hispanic visitors that I've seen come out of all types, from mountain bikers to very young families to everything. And maybe there's some need for bilingual signage. I'm not sure.
Well, it's always been popular because it's closer to the Canal District and it's easier to get to. Especially those picnic areas that are off the road there, they're very popular with Hispanic community. And as Martin says, it's one thing to get them, we want to get them to have more involvement with the park and not just use it and go home. That's tricky.
Yeah.
That'll come with time.
Oh, and I was also going to mention this beautiful silver lining that I know you know about, Larry. The trail that went up behind the campground was just, it's a huge fire road. It was a gutted, horrible mess. It was unbelievable. And we were going to have to fix it ourselves. And then a miracle. PG&E said, we need to use that road to get up to our lines to repair them. So they redid the fire road. It didn't cost us a penny. And they even put in the gate. I don't know if you've seen the gate, Larry, but yeah.
Good news.
Yes, very much so. Very
Miracles do happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great.
Okay, I want to conclude. We're gonna adjourn the meeting with a tribute from Linda for our longtime friend Connie Berto. Linda.
Thank you, and thanks everybody. Well, Connie was a friend and a friend to many. She was a long-standing Marin County volunteer who loved our public lands and knew them well. As a matter of fact, if you wanted to know where a trail was, you asked Connie, because she'd ridden it or even hiked it looking at the wildflowers, which she was so fond of. She was a frequent speaker at supervisors meetings, Park and Open Space Commission meetings, and at the MMWD. And if you had the fortune of meeting Connie, you knew she was smart, straightforward, and principled, and you were able to see her in one of her delightful cowgirl hats and matching outfits. She and her husband, Frank, moved to Sleepy Hollow in 1958, and she started riding and getting to know the trails then. And she had an incredible civic career. If there wasn't an organization that was fulfilling a need that she saw, she founded it. And she was one of her long-serving contributions to Marin County Parks is that she was appointed to represent the equestrian community on a subcommittee of the Parks, Open Space, and Cultural Commission. And she served on that committee for 29 years. That's a track record. She also, in 1979, became a member of the Marin County Open Space Volunteer Patrol. Al's on that patrol, so am I, and Connie and Robert Eichstad has for years. Connie would call it the County Mounties. And I'll give you a couple other highlights and then offer that Marine Conservation League can send this group a tribute that was published in the Marine Horse Council newsletter. But I want to just give you a couple other highlights. Connie was a founding member of the Marin Horse Council, and Rick Holland, president of that group, is here in this meeting today. That was in 1981. She was a founding member of the Trails Committee for the American Endurance Ride Conference, and was a founding member of many other groups, but locally here, the Foot People, who advocate for safe visitation on our trails. And Connie was a co-researcher with the team from Dominican University on the role of horses as potential vectors of non-native plant invasion. So if anyone's interested in that, I can send you the link. Connie also, speaking to our friends at MMWD, became president of Marin Stables and Trails and worked to help ensure that a public stable remained on MMWD property. I know there's lots of stories about Connie. Try not to cry as I talk about her. Mike, you have a story.
Yeah.
Mike Swayze?
Yes.
Mike.
Mike, share it.
Unmute yourself, Mike.
He is unmuted, but he's not coming through.
All right. Well, here's what Mike told me. When he was the natural resource manager, the watershed manager at MMWD, he looked out and saw a horse run by, and he went out to see that the rangers had caught the horse. And then who comes running up after the horse? Connie. And this was after Connie had had 2 hip replacements. So she was determined to keep on riding. And so she was just dedicated to our public lands and to equestrians. And Robert, you knew Connie well. Do you have a story? And we're seeing Robert. We're seeing Robert.
So, sorry guys, I'm on a very slow speed connection and I'll have to share stories later.
Okay, no problem. Anyway,
Okay.
we lost a hero on August 8th, and she will be remembered.
Louise Berto, I see that you're part of us participating today. Can you unmute yourself? Louise?
And you know,
I'm here.
And you know what I didn't mention is that Louise is also on the volunteer patrol for Marin County Parks.
Nice to have you, and also Maria Berto.
I don't
Maria
think
Berto.
Pardon?
I think it might be Miraja Berto, maybe.
Miraja.
Miraja Berto.
Yeah, right. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Linda.
That was beautiful, Linda.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, everything from the time I was a little kid, my mom was always keen on telling me about wildflowers, and she would always bring to the open space picnics, and she would always encourage me to go hiking with my sons. And finally in 2013, 2014, she said, you should really join, you should become a volunteer patroller. And she passed it on. She might be a little bit disappointed about how much her grandsons adore mountain biking, but she's got the horse bug. You know, my brother Joseph has a horse ranch up in Oregon. My brother Ben has a 20-year planning career. I love to hike in our open space trails, and I think we owe it all to my mom, who loved our open space trails in Marin County so much. And she loved the people that she worked with as well. And so I want to thank you all for being so kind to her.
Thanks for joining us, both of you, Louise. I knew Ben from his planning days, his planning work at Marin County, and also I know he's a barbershop singer. I know that part of Ben. So she's left a legacy, and which will not be forgotten.
And
thanks very much.
If I may add, you didn't mention the Bay Area Trails Preservation Council and I met Connie when I was a youthful 40-year-old in 1992 when I got dragged into the TPC by Martin Friedman, and that was, Connie was one of my mentors for decades, so she will be missed. She will be missed.
Thank you all. So adjourned in memory of Connie Berto. So look forward to seeing all of you in October, and somehow or other get through these next murky days. So look forward to seeing you.
No kidding.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks to all.
Thank you, Nona.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm adjourning the meeting. Thanks.
Adios.
Thank you.
Adios.